Hey folks, I'm back with another video for you, and this time it's a reaction to a debate about a proposed initiative to tax wealthy South Africans to fund a social relief grant. Now, to give you a little bit of background on this, when the coronavirus lockdowns were implemented in South Africa, the governmental department that oversees social welfare across the country instituted a 350 Rand per month social relief grant, and that was given to people who had become unemployed as a consequence of the lockdown. Now, there are activists saying that it should continue indefinitely, and that in order to fund this, the wealthy should be taxed. Now, the problem with this is that what constitutes as a wealthy South African and the number of wealthy South Africans that live here currently is shrinking month on month as those with the means to do so find ways to leave the country for greener pastures. But nonetheless, let's see what this debate has to offer.
Oh, listen to this. Tax the rich to fund the 350 Rand social relief of distress grant. Well, that's the plea by various civil society groups who've submitted a memorandum of demands to Treasury. The grant is expected to end in March of next year, and these various groups are calling for it to continue. They're demanding a wealth tax to fund this grant. They're also calling for the grant to be increased. Well, let's find out how much by. I'm joined by one of the campaigners' leaders. It's Klo Siepa, representing Amandla.Mobi. Klo, good to have you with us on the show. I appreciate it. So there's two big issues we need to talk about. We'll talk about the call for an increase in a moment. You can tell me what the demand is there. First of all, why tax the rich to pay for a grant that was never there before? What's the thinking?
So initially, the call to tax the rich was a response to the much loved question about where will the money come from, right? So we have an issue of whenever we speak of corruption, we also speak of millions or billions of money either stolen or looted or even misused by officials who are supposed to be ensuring that much needed services are provided in this country.
So I suppose the other side of the argument here could be because government's corruption is not resulting in people who need this money. I don't think anyone's arguing there that need this money because it's being stolen through corruption. Now we tax the rich. Does it seem fair?
Everybody is getting taxed, right? So everybody pays tax now. The issue here is that rich people keep getting richer, right? While people from low income backgrounds just keep getting poorer, right?
The gap is widening.
The gap is very wide, and we know the inequality rate in South Africa is very high. So many times you find that people who keep earning this money, these rich people, earn this money through the labor of people in low income backgrounds. Right now we are at a point where people are just unemployed. People do not have any means of income to support themselves, right? Just to get that 20 rands to buy bread is stressful for many people in this country. And so we're saying that you can actually find the money. You need to tax rich people more. You know, they won't starve. It's not like they will starve with a little bit more tax. Yeah.
Let's talk about when we are suggesting rich people.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to say here is that, to me, this person, this activist, I'm sure she's a very nice person on an individual level, but listening to her talk about financial planning and responsibility, I get the distinct impression that she has a very childlike mindset. This belief that, oh, you can just take from the rich, they'll keep making money, and basically she sees this, or she appears to at this point, to see this as an endless wellspring of money that wealthy South Africans will simply keep providing. What activists in South Africa and abroad always seem to misunderstand is that somebody being wealthy does not automatically entitle poorer people to demand their money. It's very easy to say, oh, wealthy people are wealthy due to the labor of working class and the poor. But The fact is, and something they often leave out, is that wealth is generated through businesses, which these wealthy people founded. It's not nearly as simple as she's making it out to be.
Who rich people? Give me a bracket, give me an LSM, give me an income bracket we're talking about. Because rich could be very rich, or are we talking lower to middle income, middle to upper? Who are we talking about here?
So we are talking about people who are earning more than 1 million. So from 1 million and above every year, right? So these are people who actually owns mansions, people who owns luxury cars, people who have millions of monies in their accounts. We also have people who are able to evade tax, so we're asking SARS to also go after those people, because if people aren't paying tax, then it means a lot more people suffer, you know, in your low income background communities.
I don't think many people would disagree, Chloe, that there needs to be some relief for those who, for various reasons, need social support as well. But you've raised two issues here, which makes it sound like because of the ineptitude of government and SARS unable to get the money that they should be, and that's because of non-compliant taxpayers.
Yes.
It's becoming the problem of those who can afford to do it. Because there's a failure on government, isn't there? Is what you're telling me.
No, definitely, definitely. I also think that it is quite sad that when we speak of poverty, when we speak of hunger, when we speak of people who are unemployed, money becomes an issue, right? And like I said earlier, that when we speak of corruption, there's billions of money involved. So at this point, it is not a matter of is there money or not. It's a matter of political willingness, right? So we've seen many times that with political willingness, things happen, and the 350 grant is one example. Although right now a lot of people are not getting it because that willingness has slowly deteriorated, meaning people have gotten excluded. There were regulations that were passed that are, you know, continuously ensuring that people are not getting this grant. So at this point, because the question of where will the money come from came, we have economists all around the country who came with this proposal to, okay, tax rich people, right? So now it is just a matter of political willingness. Are our politicians willing to go that far to ensure that millions of people in this country who are starving, who are struggling to put food on the table for themselves and their families, you know, are fed? Yeah.
What I'm noticing here is the typical kind of rhetorical appeals that are made in these sorts of debates. She's appealing to emotion and this idea that, oh, rich people can just give us their money and we're entitled to it, because that's what she's saying. She's saying that because someone might be in a disadvantaged situation, the onus is on the wealthy to look after them. Look, I've made no secret of this in the past, but I receive a welfare grant every month because of my disability. And if it were up to me, and if I were able to be financially prosperous enough, I would suspend my use of that grant immediately. I do not believe myself entitled to someone else's money simply because I got dealt a bad hand. It is very useful to have that safety net, but I have never considered myself entitled to it like this woman seems to be.
Some would suggest this is simply another handout. How does this help someone in a position like this? And I can't imagine a position that many people find themselves in. Some critics are going to say this seems like another handout. Eventually that money is going to run out. How does this help people in these situations to find work, to be able to earn their own money, to not rely on a distress grant? Because that's the goal. Surely we want as few people relying on grants as possible. How does this help them achieve that if they keep getting the handouts? That's what critics are saying.
You know, this thing of calling grants handouts is a very inhumane thing to say, because if we are being honest, nobody wants to live on grants for the rest of their lives, right? And another thing that people are not understanding is that grants are not again.
Okay, another mistake she's made. I've spent a lot of my time in social welfare offices, providing the necessary documentation and proof as to why I qualify for the disability grant. And you know what I noticed in those many hours I spent in those offices, the vast majority of people claiming social grants in South Africa do not have severe physical disabilities like I do. It is pregnant teenagers who willfully become pregnant in order to claim a monthly childcare grant. There is a culture, most definitely, in South Africa of being more than willing to subsist on government payments for as long as you can, regardless of whether you should actually be receiving them or not.
Against jobs. The reality is that they're just not there right now, and people are unable to support themselves. So we're saying at least give people this, the basic income grant is recommended to start at 1,335 per person per month. So we're saying at least empower people to be able to survive, and you'll be surprised how people actually utilize this money. Like 350 is not a lot of money, but a lot of people are able to make it reach beyond what you could even imagine, right? So calling it handouts is more like you're shaming poor people for being poor, and in the first place, it's not their fault that they're poor.
And let's just talk about the callers.
Once again, I have to disagree, just based on personal experience. There is an element of personal responsibility to the poverty that exists within South Africa, because as I said, I've seen with my own eyes teenagers willfully getting pregnant simply so that they can claim a childcare grant. Now, when they have those children, they give birth to those babies knowing full well that they aren't going to be able to pay for their education, they aren't going to be able to provide them with skills to become self-sufficient and contributing members of society, but they do it anyway. This woman is really trying her best to tug at the viewers' heartstrings, but it's all bullshit, quite frankly.
As well, as you just touched on it now, where did the number come from to increase this to 1,335? What are you basing that on?
So the number is based on the food poverty line, basically. So you will note that the 350, for a person to qualify for the 350, they need to at least get less than 624 in their account. So that is called the food poverty line. So if it goes a bit above that, at least people can be able to afford their basic needs. So it is based on that.
I'll ask you this as a last question. Just want to come back to the tax question.
Yes.
On this call for the rich to be taxed. You just to remind viewers, you're talking about R1,000,000 and more per year. Just make sure I understand that.
Yes.
What is the tax percentage that you're expecting? You can't just say tax the rich. What amount of tax are you?
So it is the richest from my knowledge and what I have read. I hope I'm correct, but it is the richest 1% in this country. So it is about 300,000 multimillionaires in this country.
And of that, I think is what I'm asking, how much do you want to tax? So say that number you just gave me now, what is the tax? Is it 1% of their income? Is it 2%?
So it depends on their income. So for people earning 1 million yearly, so it's 1%. So the tax increases based on the income people are getting yearly. But unfortunately, I'm not an economist, so I cannot go more into the numbers. Yeah.
That's okay, but what you've given me is a lot to move forward on the conversation with and have this discussion, because it's not a new call for the rich to be taxed, but that's why I wanted to just get a sense of where was the thinking coming from and what numbers were you talking about as we take the conversation forward. I'm sure we're going to get reaction. Chloe, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us. Chloe Siopa, representing Amandla.Mobi. What do you make of a tax for the rich to pay for this social relief of distress grant? But as you answer that, do give some thoughts. Imagine trying to survive on 350 Rand a month. Think about that as well.
Now take note of how that ended, where she specifically said, "Oh, I'm not an economist, so I can't get too deep into the numbers." If she can't get too deep into the numbers and how this tax is practically supposed to work, why should anyone listen to her, and why is she the representative of this initiative? Once again, this kind of mentality is common in South Africa. those who don't have seek to take from those who do. And I'm not saying that we should live in a completely self-serving, self-centered society. But what I am saying is that I'm pretty tired of seeing people who have not developed businesses and do not have the willpower or the skills or the talent to amass significant wealth, simply wanting to come in and take it from those who do. And if we allow this mentality to continue to permeate South African society, it's just going to add more and more strain on to the only class of people that actually keeps this place running in some form of modern manner. It's the wealthy of South Africa who keep South Africa running as a country as it stands right now. If you tax them down to nothing, they have no incentive to stay, and you'll simply drive them out, as I said earlier, to find greener pastures. I hope this has been enlightening for you, and for now, farewell.